Okay, hi everyone, and thank you so much for coming. My name is Stacy, and I'm a bookseller at Belmont Books, and I'm also the events coordinator. Belmont Books, for those of you who are not familiar with us, is an independent and locally owned bookstore in Belmont, Massachusetts. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that we have a number of virtual events coming up, including a science fiction event on September 24th with the editor of and some of the authors included in the book Entanglements, Tomorrow's Lovers, Families, and Friends, which is a sci-fi event. And on September 29th, we have Jeff Benedict in conversation with Tom Curran about Jeff's book, The Dynasty, which is about the Patriots. You can register for these and our other events on our website, belmontbooks.com, which is also where you can purchase tonight's book. You can keep that to yourself. A reminder that your audio and video should please remain turned off. Any questions can be sent via chat, and I will relay as many as possible to Adam and Deesha after the presentation. We're very excited, excited to welcome Adam and Deesha, and I want to tell you a little bit about them, and then I will turn the event over to them. Adam Smyer is an attorney, martial artist, and bass player. His nonfiction has appeared in the Johannesburg Review of Books, and his debut novel, Knucklehead, was the sole title shortlisted for the 2018 Ernest J. Gaines Award for Literary Excellence. Adam lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with his wife and cats. Deesha Philyaw's writing on race, parenting, gender, and culture has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, McSweeney's, The Rumpus, Brevity, and elsewhere. Deesha's debut short story collection, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, focuses on Black women, sex, and the Black church. Originally from Jacksonville, Florida, she currently lives in Pittsburgh with her daughters. And just one more reminder, please turn your video off, and I will turn the event over to Adam and Deesha.
Thank you. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Deesha.
Wow, this has been a long time coming, so I'm really excited to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me to be in conversation with you. Some people may know, we have the same agent, and so we've been connected since before your first book came out. So I've been a fan for a long time, and this has made me even more of a fan. But before we start talking about this book and how it came to be and all of that, I just want to ask you how you're doing. So we've got pandemic and, white supremacy, the battle and all of that, and you've got fires on top of that.
Oh, a check-in, a pre-event check-in.
Yes.
I love it. Thank you, Deesha, for hosting this. Thank you, Belmont Books, for putting this together, and thank you everybody who's out there now. I'm doing well. I'm used to there being a disconnect in between how I'm doing personally and how the world around me is doing. And so sometimes I'm doing well when the world is not. And it's strange. It's very strange. I'm nowhere near the fire, but the smoke is everywhere. And I'm starting to wonder, it's not right now, but I'm starting to wonder if maybe sometimes people have to evacuate because of smoke. So that's a whole, but right now things are well. And that's actually been a mantra for me, is because, for the last 4 years, it's been too much. And so, I let it in as needed. Where something is personally threatening, I let that in, but the noise, I let in according to my capacity. But I'm trying to keep my center. Today, I'm doing well at holding my center. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. So having books in the world is a good thing. In the midst of a pandemic is a tricky thing, but I think we're doing okay considering.
It's going to be really hard not to talk about your book today.
Yeah, we'll talk about that another time.
We'll talk about that another time.
But so you talked about the last 4 years. So I want to talk about that because I'm assuming this book was conceived within the last 4 years. So tell us a little bit about how it came to be, and if we keep code for Orange Menace, fascism, all of that, 4 years. How did that influence the concept for this book and how it ended up? Because I know I was lucky to have an early read. What I saw in the very beginning is different in some ways. This is a more, so much more robust, and both the early version and this were amazing. Tell us about that journey.
Wow. Well, I mean, long version is it's more like 40 years, right? Because none of this is
Okay.
new. It's more like 400 years because none of it is new.
Right.
I put pen to paper July of last year. I finally checked because I knew it was a little bit over a year. It wasn't, you know, George Floyd was still alive when I started writing it. It wasn't because of that. You know how publishing is, everything takes
Yeah.
forever, right? So whoever
Yeah.
started writing this, you know, that's not going to come out till next year. I knew I wanted to write a parody book because I think part of my coping mechanism is, you know, part of not letting it overwhelm me is letting in the absurdity, like embracing the absurdity of it. And okay, so the book is satire. It is not always being received as such, and that's okay. But when I wrote it, I thought of it as hilariously remedial. I guess everyone here, you wouldn't be here if you didn't know what the book is, but it purports to be a list of things not to say to Black people. It purports to be a comprehensive, practically complete list. If you just don't say those things, then you won't get canceled or whatever. And I thought that was hilarious because we've tried so many different ways to say the same thing. You know, just act like a normal person. Like, just, I don't care what you're doing when you're not around me. Just act like a normal person. And the abstract seems to be lost on a lot of people. So I thought maybe a list, if not actually helpful, would at least be funny to us, right? Here's just a list. Just don't say these things and we can work with you. People are grateful to have a list.
Yeah. So, you know, this is parody, it's satire, but we know that there's always at the heart of that truth, some real truths. And obviously as a writer, I love that this is, you know, words, like there's a word on one side and then there's the, you know, your commentary, I'm sorry, not yours, Daquan's commentary on this side. And, you know, I don't have to tell you this as a writer, words are powerful, words shape narratives. Narratives drive perceptions, they drive public policy, they reinforce systems of oppression. So I know, you know, this is a funny book, it's satirical, but it's also very serious because we know that it's stories and narratives that justify things like slavery. And so you upend all of that, you know, here, and you confront the narratives that people have around these words. And so even though the title is a comprehensive list of what not to say to Black people for well-intentioned people of power, I feel like you wrote this book for us. I feel like I felt like this was for me as a Black person. Yay. I felt validated, you know, and these are the, you know, feelings and things that we know. But, you know, white folks will gaslight us about this stuff. And I feel like, you know, all in one place, you laid it bare. And I think this is a book that it forces people to be honest, you know, and again, even though Daquan is talking to the collective of people of power, you know, I feel like this was just very affirming for us. So when you were writing, did you think about that in terms of how different groups of people might receive this book?
Over time, various groups of people. But at first, my goal, what you just said is extremely gratifying because my initial goal was what you said. And shout out to Akashic Books for the design and the graphics and overall presentation of the book. I wrote the words, the design was a total collaboration, trying so many different things. I had an idea, we worked with that. So much amazing input, and the result is just, I smile when I look. It's just a funny looking book in a good way, you know what I mean? Because when I wrote it, and someone asked me just to get real clear on what I was doing once the project, you know, turned into something. You know how it is. First you're just writing, and then you're like, oh shit, this is something, right? So then what is this thing? And what I visualized was Black people all over the country having this book on their desk, you know, and just, it's like a bear trap. It's just sitting there for anybody who's nosy enough to look at it. And when those things are said, because you're absolutely right, the most innocuous, innocent expression that everybody says, half the time it's incredibly bloody. You lift it up and it's got centuries of blood underneath it, right?
That's right.
And I have even reaped the benefits of this in the many, many times since the book has come out that people have said things from the book to me without a hint of irony, like not even having read the book. I think of the entry in the book and it just makes me smile. And that was my intention, was I wanted people who were similarly situated to not feel so isolated. Because like you said, it's gaslighting. You're sitting in a meeting, and for me, the quintessential scenario is the workplace, but it happens everywhere. But you're sitting in a meeting, you're minding your own business, you're just acting like a normal person, and somebody says something that's so horrific. But enough people have said it every day for so long that they've all decided to pretend that it's normal. I want people to remember Daquan's take. And like, oh, right, page 58. Yeah, we got your number. Yeah, okay. That's, And it's almost like a drinking game. You know what I mean? When somebody says it,
bingo.
Your bingo card for that day.
Exactly. And I, just so everybody listening, we are going to read a little bit of this later. I'm going to tell you some of my favorites, and I want to know if you have favorites in here, or is it like, you know, having a favorite, you know, relative or something? Can you not pick? But I have some favorites. But before we do that, I want to take a step back because you know, as I was reading this, of course, I was thinking about Knucklehead the whole time. And obviously both books deal with race, but they're very different books. Can you talk a bit about your process for each of the books, even though they're very different? Were there similarities either in how you were thinking about it or your process?
Probably the only thing they have in common is that moment of, oh shit, like I actually wrote something. Because I write something every day, you know, and sometimes it becomes something. Knucklehead started out as a short story, a spontaneous, let me just write this crazy story. And then I thought, you know what, let me write this other crazy story. The first crazy story had to do with a confrontation in a movie theater. And the next crazy story had to do with a boombox. And when I saw those two stories kind of together, I thought to myself, you know, 2 points make a line. Like it felt like the beginnings of the outlines of a larger story. And, you know, it took me 8 years to write the thing. It just kept going. And by the time it coalesced into a single, you know, arc, it was a novel. But I didn't know, I didn't set out to write a novel, or I probably wouldn't have even tried.
Because that a novel sounded daunting, is that?
Yeah. I mean, it just seemed right. I was messing with short stories and essays, and I hadn't ruled out a novel. It's just, and now the novel.
Yeah.
That's daunting to me now. I mean, I probably will write another. I will probably write a follow-up to Knucklehead, but I have to sneak up on myself a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, I did kind of set out to write this. Once the concept, you know, because I was brainstorming, and then suddenly I had a vision, and it was different from what came out because of, you know, the process with Akashic that I told you about. But I had a vision and set out to write that. And the core concept was the same, of an alphabetized list with like, you know, tab, an alphabetized tab on the side that, you know, you could refer to. And so I went into with a specific purpose and tried to be as complete as possible, as opposed to just kind of meandering my way and writing something. And, you know, I wrote Knucklehead fully intending that I would finish it and stick it in a drawer, live my life, and die. And then when they were throwing out my shit, they would, was it Emily Dickinson, who was there was a poet, like she died and they were throwing out her shit, and they were like, oh my God, this is the greatest poet. Right. So that was my plan, but it didn't happen that way.
So what made you decide to pursue it?
Well, you know, Knucklehead was my third long form. I think because I started hanging out with writers. See, you fuck around and hang out with writers, and you start realizing that like you could actually do something with it. My wife found an annual retreat for writers of color called Vona Voices Workshop, and it was a 2 consecutive 1-week sessions, workshops, not even the right, you know, term for that experience. And you get to meet your heroes, and they read your stuff, and they give you good notes on it, and you meet really cool people, and it turns out you kind of all come up together. The reason I went there was because I wanted readers who were not fixated on turning all my characters white. But what I found was actual guidance regarding craft. And my first Vona was in 2006, and that's kind of like when I came out as a writer, because before it was like, well, I scribble things down. So, but now I'm a writer, which was good, because this brain, like, when you constantly have people arguing in your head, like, you either are a writer or you got some other stuff going on. So writer was very, very good news, and I embraced it. And I guess, the natural, then eventually you try to get other people to read your stuff.
Right. And then we're fortunate because we got to experience it. So I'm going to read a couple of my favorites from the book. One is Both Sides. And when I say favorites, like, these are the ones where I've wanted to stab people when they say them. So thank you for capturing, this. But for Both Sides, you say, you like to say that the truth is always somewhere in the middle. You might even believe it, but that could only be true if one side is lying. I know that I am a human being. The other side suggests that I am not. You want to split the baby. Fuck the other side and fuck you. Keep that both sides shit to yourself. So yes, satire, yes, hilarious, but true, very true, very necessary. And there's a lot of pain in that. And so, and that's something Black folks, we've always done. I mean, who is it? Kevin Hart laughed through my pain. I think he's, that says a lot about how we operate and function in the world. I'll read one more and then I'll ask you what your favorite one is. This one is kind of similar. When I first got this book in the mail, I just opened to a random page, and this is what I opened to. Conservative. Stop describing your cousin Brett as a conservative to us. That's normalizing bullshit, and you can keep it to yourself. Conservative is choosing bonds over stocks or wearing pantyhose in the summer. That's conservative. Your cousin Brett is a Nazi. Your cousin is a Nazi. It was like that repetition that just I don't know what kind of sound I made, but my daughter was like, "What is wrong with you?" And then I handed her the book, and then she started reading it. And the next thing we know, she's taking a power and protest class in the 11th grade. Her teacher now wants to bring this into the classroom. That's the power of just capturing that, right? Because, like, take a pause. Like, we're talking about Nazis in 2020, right? Yes. But we are downplaying it, and so I feel like this is our reminder. This is documentation that people really did resist in this moment. That some of us didn't just, look the other way or accept it as normal. So I will stop talking. Do you have a favorite? And I'll read that one.
I just gotta say, I love it so much that you just opened up randomly, and that was the first one. I mean, your cousin is a Nazi almost could have been the alternate title. That would have been too long, right? Keep that to yourself. Right. A comprehensive list. Your cousin is a Nazi. I would have accepted that. They are all my children. There is.
Or you read it. You got your book?
There are some that I'd love to hear you read it.
Okay.
But I want to just, would you mind reading Ellis Island?
Oh yeah. I'll read that one.
Some of them are edgier than others. This one I felt was, this was one of the edgier ones in an edgy book, but I tried to, I had things to say.
Yeah. I had a list of my favorites, and I thought in the interest of time I should pare it down, and this is one I took off, so I'm glad that this is your favorite. Ellis Island. You can keep your early 20th century European immigration story away from us. We are not impressed. We don't care about that time some random other white person slightly shortened your grandfather's last name at Ellis Island. We weren't walking around Africa named Jefferson Nettie. You know this. Don't tell me how your grandfather came here with nothing. Some people came here with nothing. Your grandfather was not among them. Your grandfather came here with not everything. He came here with less than he might have liked. Perhaps he came here with very little. So what? Getting on the boat was his idea. See how I keep looking over your shoulder and saying, oh, wow, while you talk? That means that I give not one fuck about your recent ancestors' relatively comfortable, relatively voluntary migration. Keep it to yourself. The only exception is if your people fled full-on Nazis. Then we can talk. Your bubby hates her some Schwartzes, but if 1939 found her ass in Poland, she's in the club whether she likes me or not.
You know, I have that funny sensation where like, it doesn't even feel like I read, like, I can't believe I actually wrote that out loud and let other people read it. But I have actually had people look me in the eye and tell me that their grandfather came here with nothing. And they don't mean that they came here with nothing. I like, okay, you have your mythology. Every family has their mythology, but it's a line, thin or not, between family mythology and revisionism, which is the gateway drug to white supremacy, right? You have to, we're casting the grandfather in a certain light at the expense of other people or people, and that's fine. Just don't say it to me. Like, sit at home at Thanksgiving and say, our grandfather packed a suitcase and bought a boat ticket and got on the boat. He was very unhappy. The person is very unhappy. That's cool. I get it. I get it. But when you say it to a Black person, you have two choices, right? You just fucking ride that shit out. Or you say that, right? So I'm trying to help Black people keep their jobs, right? So you know it's written down somewhere, you read it, you felt it, it exists. You might even put that in the white elephant at work this Christmas, right?
That's right. And here's the thing though, but I think people can check themselves. They never tell that story except to Black people. And so all I ever hear is, stop complaining. Your people have no excuse. That's what I hear. All of those words. That's all I hear. And so then I want to fight.
Say it to each other. I thought they said it to. Shit, man, it's even worse than I thought.
Because why? What would be the context? Think about it. What would be the context, right?
They saved that story for us. I'm sitting here pretending my name is Adam Smyer, and somebody's telling me that their name used to be something ski, but now it's not anymore. And now I'm supposed to go, oh shit, really?
Hard times.
Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot.
All right, I'm going to read my last. Well, okay, there's so many, but I'm going to just stop here. And I think we might, I have a couple more questions, but I think at the 7:30 mark, we'll start taking questions, you think? Okay. I'm a huge fan of the women entry. Women and minorities means that all women are white. I know you believe that, but please keep it to yourself. When all you mean is white women, say so. I'm not allowed to say the words white women, but you are. Given your obsession with majorities, going forward, when I hear you say women, I'm going to assume you mean Asian women. And I was like, there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm like, you know how people are like grammar police on the internet? I'm the white woman police on the internet. When people are like, 100 years ago, women got the right to vote. No, white women got the right to vote. No, like I'm that person that shows up in your friend's comments. So I was really loving this one.
Yeah, that one is really bad. Saying, well, everybody's been able to vote since 1812. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
can I even vote this November?
Exactly. Let's see, before we get to questions, this is the question I've been wanting to ask you for over a year. So I don't know, I don't think it's still on your Facebook page as your header, but there's this great picture of you. You're presenting somewhere. You're standing in front of a huge whiteboard, and the word motherfucker, like clearly you have scrawled that hastily. And I'm thinking, what prompted that? What was the topic? Who was the audience? And you're gesturing like, so.
So that was taken. I was a guest lecturer at I think it was Berkeley City College for a creative writing class. It was a couple of years ago. I'm not exactly sure. We might have been discussing dialogue. There's a lot of motherfuckers in my dialogue, so I had to take a guess. That's would have been the topic. But yeah, that was a representative moment of that class. Those were cool young people.
Yeah. Okay. I think one more question, and I guess folks can start typing things in the chat. I don't see anything yet, but the complete title: a comprehensive list of what not to say to Black people for well-intentioned people of pallor. You mentioned to me one time that I guess you presented about, or you talked to a group of high schoolers. Was it about Knucklehead in Baton Rouge?
Yes.
Can you talk about that experience?
Oh, wow. Well, so I don't want to get too much, even though we don't know who those people are. It was a private, it was like an intimate moment. So what happened was I was there. I was shortlisted for the Gaines Award, and so they had like a separate event where I just went and I did a reading, but they asked me at the last minute, like, would you also speak to like a high school, I think they said AP English class. I was like, those are my people. Yeah, I'll go talk to some nerds. And they pulled a bait and switch on me because at the last minute they gave me like the hard cases. They gave like, you need to talk to an older Black person, people. So I walk in there like, by the way, this isn't AP English. I was like, what? And I walk in and like the cast of The Wire season 1 is sitting there, like just eyeballing me, just grown men who don't have a lot of facial hair yet. You know what I mean? Just old souls. It's just a long table full of old souls. And it's really awkward when you've got young men and then you show up and they're like, this person's here to like, I don't know, talk some sense into you. I don't know, go, right? So I'm not feeling that. They're not feeling that. And so there's that moment, right? There's that stage fright moment. There's like, you either go into it or you don't, right? So, and the well-intentioned teachers of pallor are sitting in the room, smiling in the corner. So we're not even alone. It's mixed company. And I'm getting eyeballed. And we talked a little bit. And then I just said, the things that are happening to you are being done to you on purpose. You are being starved of respect so that you'll snap and spend the rest of your life working for free over there at Angola State Prison. And then we were talking. And I didn't really even talk about writing. I ended up talking about how I did it. That I can speak to, right? Because I used to be 17. I used to be a child who adults were pretending was Freddy fucking Krueger, who you needed to kill on sight in order to like keep you and your family safe for some reason. He's got a fucking Twizzler in his hand. It's fucking strangle him, right? It's insane. 1 minute you're riding a fucking Hot Wheels, and the next everybody wants to kill you. It's insane. So I could talk about that. And I told them like just what I did to not get murdered and to not spend the rest of my life working for free on Rikers.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It was amazing. They say I even got through to some of them. I couldn't tell.
You planted a seed though. I guarantee that you planted a seed because you saw them and you talked to them like what they are, which is people.
It's a miracle of young people that you can record words that people say to you that you either don't agree with or don't understand. And later, when you have some sort of relevant life experience, years later, you can play the words back and benefit from them. It's an incredible thing. It's everything. It's why it's not a waste of time to talk to young people, because they don't have to really understand you in the moment. They can refer to it later. Their brains are like insane.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I remember all the Black kids being pulled out of school one day and taken on a bus to, I don't know, not the Civic Arena, that's in Pittsburgh, where I lived at the time, maybe the Coliseum or somewhere else. And Jesse Jackson came to speak to us. And all I remember is he said, "I am somebody." And then we got a little piece of paper that was like, "I am somebody. Jesse Jackson came to see me." I wish that we had you or somebody like you. So those kids were really fortunate to actually get some substance. So good. I'm glad you did that. We do have a question here. This is kind. When you're not writing or reading me, who are you reading?
So right now I'm reading Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. I was in Cape Town a couple of years ago, and it's my second spiritual home now, and I've just been kind of educating myself, and I was reading it to learn about South Africa. I'm actually learning about America, because America in 2020 is disturbingly like South Africa in 1960. They even have a divorce. It's incredible. It's I was daunted by the length of the book, but I don't ever want it to end. Before that, I read Becoming. I read Michelle's Becoming, and I just read it because I love Michelle. Yeah. I got so much more than I bargained for out of it. It's just such a good book, and the title is a hint, because it's not like Perfect First Lady book. It's before that, and with the time we were binging that series, The Chi, about the South Side of Chicago, and I just kept thinking, Michelle's from there, like that's, and so making those it's a really good. Just a story about a person. It's an incredible story about a person. Next up is, where is she? Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. Yes. I just felt a shudder just thinking about reading it. This, of course, is the author of The Warmth of Other Suns, which is and I hate this word, the most important book I've read since Roots. And it's funny because just this morning I was thinking about it, how I have in my head like a top 10 list of like the books that mean the most to me, the books that have affected me the most deeply. And I know, I'm almost positive that after I read this book, I'm going to have to bump one off the list to make room for this one, because Isabel Wilkerson does not play. She goes underground for 10, 15 years, man, and then she comes back up. Yeah.
I haven't read it either, but I mean, the reviews are amazing. Yep.
There's only one author who appears twice on my top 10 list right now, which is Alex Haley. And I think she's about to be the next one. I don't want to oversell it, but you almost can't oversell it, because she's going to give me another lens. You know, it's almost what I was trying to do in a small, humorous way. She's going to give me a whole other lens to look at this through, because she already did that once before. Yep.
All right. So, the question is a two-parter. Will there be an audiobook version? And if so, can you tell us who will be reading?
There is an audiobook version. Thank you for asking. Random House Audio has recorded and released, you can keep that to yourself, read by none other than Donald Faison, America's Black friend. No, I don't.
But that was so perfect.
I thought he was perfect. I thought it was a perfect, I was very, it was such a get. I've heard samples of it. He crushed it. it gave it extra significance that it wasn't just somebody with a pleasant speaking voice, but somebody who,
Right.
you know, based on his podcasts and the other things that I've been
Mm-hmm.
exposed to about him, I know he understood.
Right.
I know he gets it.
Right. So speaking of top five, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
everybody was like, you know, top five MCs, right? You know, who's your top five MC? So you can either tell us your top five MCs, or you can tell us your top five authors. Since I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. You're muted, Adam. You can't.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so I'm back. Top five
Yes.
MCs, man. Why don't I just sum them up by saying I'm old?
Okay.
And then because I'll say Rakim, right? That's all I need, really.
Yes.
Is Rakim.
1 through 5. 1 through 5.
Rakim.
Okay.
Honorable mention to KRS-One.
Okay. All right. Oh, this was something I wanted to ask you before. When you know, I'm thinking about my experience. When I hit send, turning in my manuscript, immediately I had the idea of what I needed to do with my novel that's going to be next for me. When you turned in Knucklehead, and Knucklehead was out in the world, it doesn't seem like you knew like this was going to be your next book. What did you think you were going to do next?
Oh, interesting. I assumed I was going to immediately write a sequel.
Okay.
Because I was still a little bit in that world. People were asking about it. And I think it was Matt Johnson who said, you know, you don't have to immediately write the follow-up. Like, the world will wait. You can write other stuff and get some distance. And I'm really digging that. For one thing, like I said, writing a novel is daunting to me. So there's going to be a whole body of work that I create instead of the novel. Like, I'll cut a deal with myself and I'll write something else, and then I'll cut a deal with myself and I'll write something else, and that all counts too. But I know how to use the machine in here to motivate myself to do things, and the daunting task of writing a sequel that people are asking for, that's enough to get me to generate several other books before I actually do that. But it will happen.
Gotcha. This is a question that, okay, I see this. How did you decide to have Daquan communicate this information rather than it just coming from you?
I thought it was funny. And I thought it just kind of helped the message. There's something about, and it's almost like using fiction. There was something freeing to me writing fiction about just having characters with opinions. Because then I'm not putting out there, this is me and this is what I think, and it's being tested scientifically for its veracity. People have opinions, right? So someone says something, it's just an idea. It's food for thought. It's stimulus. It's not necessarily supposed to be a complete equation or meal, and so having the book come through the perspective of this hypothetical Black coworker that you're secretly thinking of when you claim to have Black friends was a way of just creating a space in people's minds for this body of opinions to reside. It's almost a way, maybe it's harder to push away. To, you know, so, well, he thinks that, he's wrong, the end. But what if there is a Daquan in my life? And what if when I say, oh, our boss is so niggardly, maybe he is actually, when he's giving me his poker face, maybe he actually is thinking what the book says under N, right? It's insidious, I think. And it wasn't necessarily a conscious choice on my part, but when I kind of deconstruct it, I think that might have been where I was coming from.
Funky is one of the entries in there, and Tomas is saying, can you talk about that and the general topic of appropriation of Black culture?
I like the Beach Boys a surprising amount. I respect the Beach Boys a surprising amount, because in some ways I feel like that's how far you have to go to find people who actually walk the walk. Like, if being white is so great, then be white. You know what I mean? Even the Beach Boys got dinged, right? That one time where they just basically took a Chuck Berry record and put their name on it. But Chuck went to court and actually won a lawsuit against the Beach Boys in the 60s. And now when I think it's like Surfin' USA or something, the writing credit is like Chuck Berry and the Beach Boys. They didn't sit in a room together and write that song. A judge said Chuck Berry wrote that song. So even they couldn't resist, right? But have the courage of your convictions and say, like, you know what, being white is awesome. Let's fucking take Barbershop and make that shit awesome. And they did. The Warmth of the Sun is one of the greatest songs ever recorded. Similarly, in my opinion, Led Zeppelin's The Rain Song is one of the greatest songs ever recorded. That song, I'm tearing up just thinking about The Rain Song. And I wish that they had had the courage of their convictions and just did the thing that they did, right? Instead of 10 albums, if there were just 3 Led Zeppelin albums that were actually Led Zeppelin songs and not just basically minstrel shows, they would have less money, so I totally get it. But I would think of them the way I think of the Beach Boys. Instead of, an example of the great Paul Mooney's immortal line, right? Everybody wants to be an African American, but nobody wants to be an African American.
Right.
It's very hard to not see that. Even sometimes when I go back to the music I love, I'm trying not to name names. I've already named 2 sets, and I made the mistake of watching Tom Waits recently, and basically he's just a guy robbing a grave. It was terrible. It was terrible. It's just a guy with a shovel digging black people up. It was the worst thing I ever saw.
So the irony, I didn't know that story about the Beach Boys, but they did that song with the Fat Boys, Wipeout. So
They did.
I did not know that. So
I don't know if were they involved or were they just sampled? I never really knew. I know that it's a merging of the two, but I don't know if they, because like Aerosmith and Run DMC at least did the video together, but I don't know if the actual Beach Boys and the actual Fat Boys did anything, or if the Fat Boys just did it the right way and got the fucking song cleared before they used it.
That's
I don't
true.
know.
Well, right after this, I'm going to watch the video because I won't be able to not think about that. I need to know.
And I know your book has a Wipeout reference that just warms my. We'll talk about that later. But
yes,
you got some gems in there.
I was a huge Fat Boys fan. So, are there any words that now that it's too late that you wish you could have included?
That's a popular question. It's a mean question because as soon as you let something go, you start wondering that. And I didn't have one for the longest time, but I have one now, and I think it's politics, right? And I address that in other ways. I address it in so many other ways. What people are dismissing as, do you like chocolate cupcakes or do you like strawberry cupcakes? It's not that. Like whether we should have forcible hysterectomies is not politics.
Politics, exactly.
That's not. So I address that in other ways. Your cousin's not conservative, he's a Nazi is kind of another way of saying that. Yeah. And I don't think I was quite hearing that euphemism quite so much a year ago.
Yeah. Now I can't remember, is political correct in here? Politically correct?
No.
That's what people say. Oh, it's just PC. It's, people don't say PC anymore, but it's still the dismissiveness of our lives essentially as political correctness.
Okay, help me try to reconstruct the history of that word, because I swear I remember a time, like it's one of those words, like the term special interest group. Special interest used to mean big oil.
Right.
And cigarettes and guns. And then Reagan just started using it to mean black people. And then everybody
Yeah.
started using special interest to mean black people. And I would swear that politically correct, like people actually like meant that without a hint of irony. And it wasn't some sort of gotcha cancel culture thing. It was just like to say that Thanksgiving is everybody sitting down and having a meal together is like incorrect. Like I kind of
Right.
remember that. And then they started saying that we were using it in a way that we weren't.
Right.
And because our side is gullible, we kind of started defending against that accusation as if it were true. Like it's so convoluted, like, and that's not even what I'm getting at. That's not who I'm hypothetically speaking to anyway. I'm not hypothetically speaking to the woke gotcha people or whatever. I'm talking to the, like, you know, the Prius with the Obama '08 bumper sticker, because they're clearly not the worst. Like we know who the worst is, but they need help.
So let's be political here for a minute. I saw a tweet today said something, you know, basically talking to the Dems, like y'all need to cheat, right? Like,
I saw that tweet.
What do you feel
It's
about
not
that?
enough to vote. Y'all need to cheat. I was like, well, I don't. But then saying it that's like a whole other. And
I've been thinking it. I'll admit, I've been thinking it for 4 years. Can we just cheat? Because if that's how the game is being played now. But
well, I mean, a little bit that's related to what I said about the gullible thing, right? I mean, I think when you have one side that's primarily concerned with being perceived as virtuous, and then the other side is primarily concerned with winning. If that were a physical fight, the virtuous person would have to be so much more talented than the one who's just willing to do anything. The one who's like, I'm gonna take this thumb and touch your brain with it is my favorite for that fight, because you'd have to be Bruce Lee to win that fight fairly. My hope is that overwhelming turnout overcomes what's coming. I don't know about cheating. I don't even know how we would cheat. There's always a good chance that tweet was sent from somewhere in Moscow, right?
This is true. This is true.
I don't know what we're supposed to do, and not to mention, it ain't over until January. I'm not letting my guard down until he's gone, because I mean, I think at this point we all know that it doesn't end with the election. And it's weird that everybody's just walking around being like, you know, there's going to be shots fired on January 20th, and here I'm on Zoom talking about a book.
Yeah. Okay, going back to the book. So you and I are, you know, a little long in the tooth, right? But on occasion we get asked by young writers, you know, who maybe are discouraged, or, you know, who aren't sure what to do, they're publishing seems daunting. What advice, you know, so what are that series of books, like Letters to a Young Writer, Letters to a Young Black Writer, what would you say?
It's so daunting. I don't even know what to say. One, the entire game has probably changed twice, right? Since I started on a path of entering the marketplace, which I would say I met our agent in, I think it was like 2014. I feel like the game changed between then and the pandemic. And I feel like it's changed again now. I don't even really know what to say. And I don't feel like that system has suddenly become a meritocracy because I had 2 books out. I feel more lucky than anything else. I guess a piece of advice that I got at Vona that really holds up is that what everyone who has succeeded has in common, and it might be the only thing that they have in common, is that they didn't give up, right? So if you give up, you're done. But even that is a little bit, there's an asterisk, right? Because I gave up, but my agent didn't. So I said I had set something in motion, and then I gave up. But just keep at it, because it is mysterious and unkind, right? There were these hashtags a while back where, you know, people with something to say were given advances of $35, and people with nothing to say were given advances of $2 million, and we know what that's about. So,
yep.
I mean, and then at the same time, it's, you know what, my real advice would be, have a day job. That's me. That's me. Because I feel like have a backup plan and or alternate source of income, because what I see happen to people is this economic coercion that risks actually even changing what they have to write. Like, what's the point if you're trying to accomplish the goal of a job with your writing? Like, and no advice fits anybody else. I already regret saying that. What has worked for me is to meet certain needs in certain ways, right? If I had been trying to sell as many copies of this book as possible, it wouldn't say what it says. It would be another, like, it's okay that you're racist, you don't mean it, you're just ignorant, and if I wanted to make money, I used to say after I wrote Knucklehead, like, my next book, I was going to go for financial success by writing a book called Madison is Awesome. And it's a book about a little white girl who can do literally anything. I'm giving that to the world. Like, if you just want to make a lot of money, write a book called Madison is Awesome about a little white girl who can do literally anything. And you will sell so many copies of that book. I'm just not interested in writing it.
Right. So before we turn things back over to our good friends at Belmont Books, I'm going to read one last entry from a comprehensive list of what not to say to Black people for well-intentioned people of color. Pronounce. That was one of my other favorites. Don't complain to me that you don't know how to pronounce Kwame or spell Nzinga. Motherfucker, your name is Seamus O'Shaughnessy. Shut the fuck up. I just thought that was a good note to end on. Thank you, Adam. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Deesha. This is as good as I thought it would be. I love talking to you.
Likewise.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Adam and Deesha, so much. That was really a lot of fun. And I think that people really enjoyed it, and we really appreciate you spending the time with us. And I thank everybody else for coming out and listening, and great questions. And I hope that everybody stays safe, and I hope that we have good news in a few months, and please take good care.